Oh, good afternoon. Thank you for welcoming me here. This is actually the first time I've ever spoken at Theosophical Society in the United States. The older I get, it seems the less I'm as prone to traveling as I used to when I was younger. But I've spoken at many of the Theosophical Societies in the United Kingdom and Europe when my wife and I used to live over there. And we were always welcomed in India, in the south, and Tamil Nadu, and now back to their name of Chennai as well. And the Theosophical Society, of course, is a society aimed at helping their adherents to understand the more esoteric principles of Vedic philosophy. So all of the branches of Veda are something which is meant to bring a person closer to truth. So Atma Vidya, I said, which is the core, what I said I would speak about today. Atma means the soul. So the actual soul actually resides in the heart of an individual, in that, I say, area of the body. It means knowledge. Veda means truth. So Atma Vidya, knowledge of the soul, is at the core of all Vedic sciences. It's at the core of understanding all of the Vedic sciences, one of which is astrology, another is Ayurvedic medicine. And of course, the yoga system is the embodiment of action for human beings. So I am fairly well known in the field of jyotish, which means the science of light, as a Vedic astrologer. And I was always very interested in esoteric sciences. My background actually was philosophy and religion, and led me to a search toward Veda, toward Indian Hindu philosophy and science. And so when I was young, I went and I visited many different teachers and tried to read as much as I could. I am a reader of the books of Alan Watts and others back in the 60s, which began my real looking towards something a bit different. And my judeo-christian background, I was always considered a bit of a rebel as well. But in finding the Vedic teachings, I found a world in which there were no more prejudices. There were no more fanatical understandings at its core. We have fanatical followers of every organization. God help us if we're brought up, in some Catholic churches as altar boys, or if we're brought up in some other organizations which tend to have very fanatical followers. We've seen this in all so-called religions. But real spiritual directive has no bodily distinction. It has no distinction as far as this is only for this class of people or this is only for that class of people. This is what Atma Vidya means. It's knowledge of the soul. Aham Brahmasmi is the most important phrase, or you might say mantra, uttering, that one will find in so many Vedic literatures. Aham means that I am, and Brahmasmi means Brahman. So I am Brahman. I am that part of that eternal force of God. I am spirit soul, part of the ocean of soul, of reality, of eternal life. I am not this body. I am not a man. I am not a woman. I am not a dog or a cat. And verily, the most ancient of the yogic texts, today in many of our yoga centers, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras seem to be the most popular, but they're actually quite modern, the Yoga Sutras. They're not so old. The most ancient of the yoga texts is actually Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is actually the oldest of the texts of yoga. But yoga means to unite. So yoga is the process. Yoga is the process. Astrology is the science of time. So we're here for one who is born, death is certain. And for one who dies, birth is certain. There's no question of this. There's no question of relative truth, because truth is eternal. Truth is truth. It is not that, well, that's your truth and this is my truth. We can have so many beliefs, right? Today I believe this. And then tomorrow I may go, well, I don't believe that anymore. That's not my truth now. My truth is such and such. Well then, this is only the truth of the mind at any one time. But Atma Vidya goes much deeper than this. Atma Vidya means a realization of the eternal self. The eternal self, who we are. And this is not an easy thing. It is not an easy thing. But if we understand who we are, at least intellectually, then we can begin to make that search. Because inside, we're the same. We're ever fresh. Ever fresh. Ever young. Is it not true? Is it not true? Okay? I mean, I'm approaching 60 years old, and I look in the mirror now, and I think, it's only the body that's getting any older. Within the seer, me, I'm the same. There's no difference there. So the I that's seeing is the same. And it's the same I that dwells within you. Different, yet the same. So we each have an individual personality, yet we're all part, you might say, of the ocean of reality, of the ocean of souls. So therefore, all of these Vedic sciences are meant to help us to begin to contemplate, who am I? How did I get here? What is the real goal of my life? So Vedic astrology is a wonderful science. From the very first time I was introduced to it, I was very attracted. Because immediately for me to begin to understand how cosmic forces affect us. Because even in our daily life, we can understand how our minds move us, don't they? It seems our minds move us in this direction. Our minds move us in that direction. Well, actually, there are certain forces that are upon us. And this is because there is a set of circumstances that we have to live out in each lifetime. And jyotish, or Vedic astrology, is the study of this. It's the study of karma. It's the study of transmigration of the soul. That here today, I may call you Bill, or Jane, or Mandara, or Jennifer, or Jim. But who were you in the last lifetime? Who will you be in the next? So therefore, one who begins to get this concept, it behooves them to think about this. And if this is true, then what is the point? What is the real point? I have to balance my material life. I can't pretend I don't have duties. We have duties. Even in the Vedas, the prescription for human life is that there are 4 different categories of life that have to be balanced. One is called dharma. And dharma, a lot of people think, well, that means your duties, to your family and whatnot. Actually, dharma means religion. But it means it in a higher sense, that every human being has a duty to begin to understand themselves, that there are certain higher duties that have to be performed, that need to be performed, in order to step by step bring ourselves into the light, to begin to understand what life is all about. So we may have, a dharma for one person in a lifetime may be different than another. And then there's Artha. It gives 4 categories. Artha is the second one. And Artha means the work that you do. So there is always something to pay for every action. For every action, there's a reaction. So therefore, the whole idea of dharma was to help to curb human society in a way that allowed us to grow, that allowed us to gain knowledge, and not to go down a road into deeper ignorance or illusion. And so Artha simply means what you do for a living. What work? Your work should be honest. It doesn't matter what that is, because no one work will make you any happier than another. It doesn't matter whether you're a big banker and you're making billions of dollars and doing mergers and acquisitions, or you're a cab driver, or you're a janitor. The work in itself that is done simply for money should be something honest. So there's those categories of life, right? We all need some search, which is dharma. Dharma is an adherence, that it's my duty to begin to think about the meaning of things, right? How I should enact my life. Artha, some kind of work. And then kama. Everyone has heard, or sometimes people say, what's kama? And then I say, well, have you ever heard of Kama Sutra? And everybody goes, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. I know that, right? Well, kama simply means pleasure-oriented activities. So what you do for pleasure. And sex is just one of them. It's one of the pleasures, right? It's what you do that allows you to feed yourself on that sensual level as well. And it's not something to be denied. Every human being has to deal with this human body, right? In some circles, it might be said that everyone should be a single celibate monk. You should give up sex. How's society going to go on? This is not normal. This is not normal. It's not normal at all. And so in every country, in every place of the world, in every religion, basically people are married and they have children. But the idea is that there are some curbs. You get married, you have children, you try to bring your children up in a way that has some piety to it, so that human society can be moved towards a more progressive way of thinking. And the fourth category of human life is moksha. Moksha means the search for liberation. This is also not something so easy, and it's not something so easy to understand. Talk about esoteric. The higher realms, shall we say, of the search for liberation or ending birth and death is not something which we can sit down and intellectually understand. It takes many, many years, many, many lifetimes. And so, therefore, it is really something of the you might say, in the realm of greatly advanced spiritual personalities. It is not that just because someone dons a robe or dons a monkhood or takes up a nun's habit, that automatically they are in the realm of higher consciousness. This is the realm of the highest form of consciousness. But the knowledge that these categories are there, that all human beings should delve into, is there for everyone. Everyone should get that opportunity. So the Vedic sciences are all geared to that a human being should have those opportunities. So what is useful about Vedic astrology? It is actually much more useful to the populace today because of our desires in so many ways. We're sort of, we're brought up, to really not know what the playing field is. Not to really know, well, what are we supposed to do? We're taught when we're young, well, you should do this job or that job and then get married and then just be happy. What's going to make me happy? What is it that's going to make me happy? It is only that which will feed the soul will actually make us happy. So Vedic astrology begins to allow us to understand destiny. When I look at a birth horoscope, and I've been doing this for a long time now, and after 35 or so years, I find that I know a little speck because it is such an all-encompassing science. I become more and more humbled. How can I understand it with my pea brain? But I am constantly trying to get the import and to help those through utilizing it. But in looking at a birth chart and where the planets were at birth, we can understand what kind of body you were given, what kind of opportunities you'll be given, what kind of basic nature you will have, right? What kind of basic nature, what type of work would be best for you, what will make you feel most integrated, the span of the lifespan maybe, whether you'll have children, whether what will occur in the lifetime. The birth horoscope will show this, and it will show the timings during life. So this can be very useful, very, very useful, because we can begin to look at the life as a whole. Because, we get too caught up And you might say we get caught up in the moment and we don't see anything else. So if we're suffering, we really get caught up in that. That life is just, it's just hell, it's horrible, I'm suffering, all of these things, and why me? Why have these things happened to me? And some of us have to put up with worse tragedies than others. Right? Some of us have to put up seemingly with worse tragedies than others, or more suffering. And others seem to get more material enjoyment. So it seems these are the gods today. Those that seem to have the most material enjoyment, that seem to have the most money. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. I've attracted a lot of varied clients in my life because I tend to be a very grounded, non-fanatical person. And I have quite a few clients that are wealthier than most people could ever imagine. And let me tell you, they're no happier than you are. A lot of them are a lot less. They're a lot more burdened. A lot more burdened. And they don't understand why. They don't understand why they have all this responsibility, but they're so attached to it that they, never for a moment could they give it up. But the key is not giving up. The key is utilizing what facility you have in your life that will help you toward real knowledge. And so for someone that is materially extremely well off, extremely what we might say wealthy in a material sense, charity is the only means. It's the only means to develop non-attachment. And it's the duty, it's their dharma to do that. Because you could die a billionaire, that doesn't mean you're not going to be born a dog. Doesn't mean you're not going to be born in the slums of Calcutta. And it also doesn't mean that maybe you still have an accumulation of that type of karma that you may be born wealthy again. But the idea is that we get the fulfillment of our desires by acting in a way that will fulfill them. And this is actually a great secret which is explained in the Vedas. How to direct yourself in the next birth. You can get what you want. But if you really begin to gain higher knowledge, you'll begin to say, why do I want those things? Because every time I'm just going to come back and suffer more and more and more. So the idea is that the only thing that will really make us enjoy will be that which feeds the soul. And in a certain wonderful way, those greatest attributes of human life feed the soul. What makes you happy? Simple thing. Let me ask you a question. Do you get happier when someone gives you a birthday present, and you're unwrapping it, and you're all ready to open up, and you see what this present is they gave you? Or do you feel a little bit more gratification if you've taken the time to think about somebody else you care about and buy them a birthday present and wrap it up as you're waiting to see the reaction of them getting this? Because, and it's not because of the thing that's in the box. It's because of what? It's love. We're all looking for love. We're all looking for that highest and most wonderful of spiritual emotion, which is love. So Vedic astrology is wonderful because it begins to allow us to understand the system of transmigration of the soul, of karma, and hopefully makes us begin to think, okay, well then I have to really rule my life in such a way to try as much as possible to curb the things that are, so we say, bringing me down or bringing me more and more into an unhappy state of mind, a negative kind of consciousness, that are bringing me anger or resentment, holding things against others, bearing grudges, right? And that bring up emotions, and what happens? They hurt us. I feel bad. If I am holding such things against others, I'm the one that's suffering. I'm the one that's missing the moment. And every moment that goes by, you'll never get it back. Every moment that's spent wallowing in whether that's self-pity or anger, it'll never come back. So Veda tries to wake us up. It tries to wake us up. And Vedic astrology is very poignant, because if you ever go to a qualified Vedic astrologer and you give them accurate birth data, without knowing anything except there's this man or woman, they're probably, he knows how old you are standing there, should be able to tell you pretty much all about yourself, all about your nature, what's pretty much occurred in your life, what periods of life, what happened, and that in itself has to be astounding to your average person. Wouldn't you say? I mean, it has to be. It has to have, some effect that well, wait a minute, there has to be something here because it's a science. And it's very, very useful to allow us to begin to understand what's laid out for us and how we can go with it. There's going to be times when maybe certain events will devastate us. And we'll think, why? Why has this happened? Why have these people acted in such a way? Let it be their problem. If you're going to take it on as yours, it's only going to make you suffer more. Ayurveda is the science of medicine. And it's more of a preventive system of medicine, okay, than a system of curing. It allows curing, but the point is it teaches one how to live. When one understands the workings of the body, what are the energies, what are the subtle energies working within the body, the different vayus. The vayus are the different airs in the body. You have airs that move upwards, airs that move downwards. You have so many different parts of the physical being. And there's also the subtle being. There's a subtle body. There are actually several different subtle bodies. So as the bodies get finer and finer, we come more and more and more close to where is the beginning of disease. And so Ayurveda begins to teach us this. And it really all begins with consciousness. The more our consciousness becomes polluted, the more we become covered by anger, the more we become covered by desires which only serve to stir the fire of misery, the more disease is brought on. And when you add to that eating absolute horrible foodstuffs that are not worthy of human beings, and add to that living in an environment which only causes great stress and anxiety, and add to that a lack of drive to do the simplest things, which will enable the body and the life airs to keep moving, we have a serious situation which allows great disease to come about. So Ayurveda teaches how to live. It means the science of life. And the core of it, as with jyotish, Vedic astrology, is Atma Vidya. A doctor's not doing his job. If he can't point a patient to, okay, I'm going to help you to become healthier in body and see if we can't cure these maladies. But if he's not pointing a person towards actually what also feeds the spirit, then he's not really a doctor. We have very few doctors on the planet today. Most of them are very linear today. If you've gone to a doctor today, most of the time they ask you, so what do you think is wrong? I thought that's why I came to you. You're supposed to tell me that. Well, and the system of medicine where it's only, this is wrong, we take drugs. We just take drugs, we take drugs, we take drugs. Again, this is causing more and more problem. So Ayurveda is wonderful. If you begin to understand Ayurvedic philosophy and how it brings about a balance of the mind, of the body, and then points one towards contemplation. Contemplation's a lot more important than meditation. Way more important. Okay? Meditation's very difficult. Okay? Especially silent meditation. It's very, very difficult for most people to do. First, contemplation. Beginning to contemplate what you get an opportunity to learn. Beginning to contemplate how factors affect you in this world. Beginning to really see how you react, how emotion affects you, how everything in this world affects you, and then to begin to desire to pull yourself up out of that. So contemplation is so important. If we don't think, we never get anywhere, right? If we're, I used to joke years ago that, if you belong to the beer and TV club, you don't get much opportunity to think about anything. I used to, when I was younger, I'm actually from a family, I used to have to to engage in the gem business when I was younger. And I used to go out and I used to sell gems to jewelry stores and, you know, on a wholesale basis, and I would have to wait and sit and wait for the jewelry store owner to do these things. And before I would go, I would always read the paper in whatever city I was in or town and look and see what games there were, football games or baseball games or basketball games, who the teams were, who won last night, things like that, because it was the only thing that most people could feel a kinship if we talked about. Since I was young, I've been weird in the eyes of a lot of people, that I always thought about things that were a little different. You know, I mean, I couldn't help it. I used to ask some very difficult questions of the spiritual leaders when I was brought up, you know, and they were so difficult that they were very nervous having me in classes and Sunday school and whatnot. But when I would go to these stores and do that, and so to get close to them, yes, okay, yes, yeah, come on in. So I would try to develop a rapport. So once we got rid of the, you know, the real ice, I would say, hey, did you see the game last night? And if he did, oh, you a fan of the Raiders? Yeah, you kidding, right? Oh, okay, now we have a rapport. Now I can do business with him. Now, you know, but if I brought up anything else, it would immediately shut down. But of course, I'm there to do business, so I'm not there to discuss philosophy, nor am I there to discuss sports. But the reason I'm giving it as an example is that most people find that it's too difficult to contemplate. It's not unattainable. For all of us, it is attainable. It is attainable that we can begin to contemplate what are the answers and we can begin to search. Yoga means to unite. Yoga, link with the Supreme. So the science of yoga is the process. So if we say that jyotish is one of the Vedic sciences which gives knowledge of transmigration of the soul, of karma, reincarnation, what is going to manifest in your life. Ayurveda is another science which will help to understand the body. And they both point towards knowledge of the soul. But then, okay, what's the process? What is the process? What do I do? And there are many different forms of yoga, because there's many different kinds of people and they're on different levels of the path, right? And no one is better in quality than another. No one soul is better in quality than another. In Bhagavad Gita, it says that a person, that the great sage sees with equal vision. An elephant, a dog, it says a dog eater, right? So that's pretty difficult, isn't it? It's difficult for me to see that. But once we do, we can't act in the same way anymore. We can't. We can't treat animals in the way that society does. You know, one of the phrases of Gandhi, you all know who Mahatma Gandhi was. He said, a measure of the greatness of a nation is in how they treat their animals. And most Western nations today are not treating animals as though they have any right to exist. So once we begin to think about these things, then it behooves us to begin to change our mode of action. And I am certainly not one that judges anybody. Not judges anybody. Because wherever we are in life, whatever we think we want to do, we're being forced. We're like puppets. I've learned that from being an astrologer. We're like little puppets made to dance in the planetary forces. But once we get an understanding and begin to direct ourselves, we get that help from Great Brahman, from Super Soul, right? From God in your heart. And you know who's the greatest guru? Right? People say, oh, it's this man, it's that guru. No, the greatest guru is the one that's in your heart. That's the greatest guru. If you have the ears to hear. If you develop the eyes to see. And the only way to do that is to begin to gain knowledge. So as much as we can gain knowledge, then we can better direct ourselves. And it's not a race. Whatever level one gets to, one will pick up in the next lifetime. That's assured.